He's been on the show twice before. He's in Nashville, Tennessee. Dr. Gregg Steinberg, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Well, Mark, it's definitely a privilege and an honor to be on your show again.
Privilege and honor is all mine for having you. You've had two conversations with us, both of them as just a golf nerd. You can see by my cap, I really loved. The first one you showed or illustrated lessons that you can learn from watching PGA Tour players. That was the second one, I should say. And the first one was about emotional and mental mastery, which is essentially your kind of calling card. It's how you've hung your hat, if you will, as a sports psychologist. So for the folks who haven't listened, they can go and check it out. But please also just give us the quick whistle-stop tour about who you are, how you came to where you are, please.
So I'm a professor of sports psychology at Austin Peay State University, just outside Nashville. Been doing that for 26 years.
Governor.
Yeah, I know, a long time. I've been working with PGA pros like Brian Gay and Brant Snedeker, and worked with a bunch of teams. University of Florida men's golf team won the national championship. And actually, I did a show on the PGA Tour XM Sirius for 4 years as their expert. So been around the block, we might say.
I would say so. Spending most of your time out on the PGA Tour now in Nashville, Tennessee, as you reference, and us here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's December time. It's wintry. It's cold. You more so than me down in Columbus, but still cold and kind of nasty. And golf gets difficult. For the fans down in the Southern Hemisphere, you can apply this when you go into winter, when we go into the summertime. So what you pitched to me was I was like, this is brilliant, because most physical things golfers can go and practice. But now during wintertime, practice is sort of scuppered some. Scores start to rise because of extra clothing, not as mobile, bad lies and fairways and stuff. And you said, hey, let's talk about what we can do, or what golfers can do over the wintertime to stay emotionally and mentally sharp. So why don't you just tee us off right there with the concept of it, and then we'll go from that.
Well, one of the most fascinating topics in sports psychology is imagery. Everybody's fascinated with imagery, or we say visualization, but it's definitely a great tool for the toolbox in terms of the mental game. Mm-hmm. As an example, it's wintertime. Let's say we were working on something that a bad habit. I know my bad habit is I have a tendency to break my arm coming down.
Right, yeah.
And we know in sports psychology that actually imagery can enhance muscle memory. I know it sounds fascinating. It's not as much as actually doing it, but the way imagery works is when we image something, we actually send a signal from our brain to our muscles. Yeah. And you might say that kind of grooves the muscle memory. So if you're working on a bad habit, let's say for me, I want to keep my left arm a little, not totally tight, but maybe a little more extended on the downswing. I would visualize that over and over again. And that signal can actually groove that muscle memory. It's actually based on the psychoneuromuscular theory that I teach in class every year. And it's just really fantastic that imagery can help you overcome bad habits or whatever you're working on. It can help you to groove the muscle memory.
Okay, I'm a believer, but I'm sure a lot of folks listening to this, even the folks down in the south of the world right now, Southern Hemisphere in the summer, you can use this imagery to help. But you get the naysayers that go, oh, goodness, this is hocus pocus. Please, man, how can I sit here on my couch or my chair and close my eyes and really get focused? But there's a discipline to this. And I've seen the folks and spoken to folks who really engage in this completely, not sort of happenstance and 50-50 and in a bit, out a bit, that really dive into this. Bryson DeChambeau, for one, we spoke at the PGA Championship in 22. During his time off because of the hand injury, he said he actually picked up clubhead speed because he just sat and visualized the stuff. Talk to me about the discipline of doing it properly and consistently and sticking to it and not going, oh, goodness, this doesn't work after just a few days.
Well, I think you're right. The first principle is you have to believe in it. And if you believe in it, you're going to do it consistently, and then therefore it's going to work. It's interesting. You talked about kind of a rehab process, because mental imagery can definitely help with the rehab process, because when you image, let's say your hand or being broken, like you said with Bryson, the blood flow goes to that area, and then ultimately you bring in the immune system, and that can help with healing. A lot of athletes, I do work with them. I create a mental toughness rehab program using imagery.
Yeah.
But also, I think an important concept of imagery is you want to do it in a quiet, comfortable place, because
Okay.
we know when you're more relaxed, you can image better. And so if you're doing this, let's say after a warm shower, you would relax and then image yourself, maybe playing a couple of golf holes or working on a bad habit, whatever it is. But if you do it consistently, believe in it, do it in a spot that it's like your imagery spot. It's all going to enhance the process.
Truly. And you know why I sort of believe this? Because here over the last few months, I've taken to cold plunging in the morning. And you know what it's like. You get in the cold water and your body goes into the panic or the fight or flight thing. And all of a sudden you're more concerned with what you're feeling than what's actually happening mentally. And the focus it requires sort of gets a little bit better every day. It sort of reminds me of a quote by Jack Nicklaus where he's like, every shot I hit, I would see it in a movie. And then I remember as a golfer, I tried this. My movie was broken, and eventually I just gave up because it didn't work. Are you getting me what I'm saying here?
Well, yeah, I use the example of Jack Nicklaus, and my old saying is success leaves clues. If Jack Nicklaus does it, it's for a reason.
Mhm.
But ultimately, I think people that struggle with imagery, one of the examples I give is, we talk with our hands, we eat with our hands, we're very hand-oriented. It's also good to image with your hands. So, for instance, you're about to hit your tee shot and you want to hit a draw. You might stand behind the ball and image the draw and kind of do this with your hand. If you want to hit a fade, you might kind of do this move, more of a fade move. And the idea is when you use your hands, it helps with imagery. Or when you're putting, you're over the ball. And if you kind of feel like you're going to roll it, right, you can actually see the break more. For whatever reason, because we're hand dominant, when we use our hands, it helps with our imagery.
How about hand dominant? How about I pitch this to you too? Now, I'm picturing myself sitting in my chair, and I'm relaxed, and I'm getting into the imagery of even self-help, self-healing, and my golf swing how I want it to be. But when I'm on the golf course, as an on-course announcer, if I've got Jordan Spieth, it's the best job ever because I don't have to say anything for 3 hours with a TV show because he does everything, and I can't make a mistake, to be honest. And but this guy talks out everything that's about to happen. He gets there, and Michael Greller's got the bag, and Jordan's like, "Well, Michael, this and the lie, and I'm going to do that, and I should do this," and essentially talks his way into conviction. I mean, is this something too that during this imagery session or this practice session without golf clubs we can do as well? Because I believe that sort of almost faith comes by hearing, if you will.
Well, here's an example I think that would help the listeners. One of the things I like to work with, especially younger players, is I want them to develop a short game system. So, like for 50 yards, they have a system, for 60, for 70. And I tell them, if you own it, you can verbalize it. So for 60 yards, you got to tell me what you do. I take it back 3/4 and a 3/4 pace. And for 70, I do it this way. And for 50, when you can verbalize it, you can own it and you believe in it. And I think that's what Jordan Spieth is showing us, is that when he verbalizes his shot and what he's about to do, it makes him believe in it, and then he owns it.
I think that's a great point. I want to stay there for a minute because all of us golfers, with this conundrum or this sort of dichotomy between wanting to do better, but then we're riddled with self-doubt and unsurety. And and that self-talk, that imagery of seeing oneself successful, talking oneself successful, that stuff really starts to grow roots after a little while, doesn't it?
Yes. Again, success leaves clues, and the great athletes, they're their best friends. And how you are your best friend is you talk yourself into being your best friend.
Mhm.
Self-talk is, I'd say, one of the key ingredients to the mental toughness package, one of the key ingredients to boosting your confidence. If you tell yourself, I can hit this shot. I'm going to hit the shot. I'm going to hit it right down the middle. You start to believe it because you're verbalizing it. And so it's essential to have positive self-talk throughout a round.
Help us with this. Now, again, I'm seeing myself in my quiet space, in my little office here because it's quiet. Um, the us golfers, or human beings really nowadays, want everything instant, packaged, as easy as possible. Like I said to you, how about we do 5 tips? And you're like, no, not so much. We just got to talk about the concept. But golfers or human beings want things easy. So you try something once or twice, then you don't see the results. You're like, ah, fag this. I'm not sure about this stuff. I want you, please, to advise the viewer and the listener to say, hey, start doing this and keep at it. Increments of improvement, whatever you want to go. I feel like we almost need to motivate folks to stay with this.
Well, I think with imagery, you got to do with what's easy. So, you can start with visualizing a short putt and then work on with longer putts. And I think we can visualize making putts. And then all of a sudden, we start visualizing our short game and seeing the ball go where we want and land where we want. And then we can start seeing our shots curve the way we want. Start with something you're good at and then keep on progressing. But like anything with the physical skill, the mental skills take time. They take discipline, they take belief. And same thing with self-talk. A lot of people have a difficulty being their best friend. They feel uncomfortable. So one of the things I suggest with all my players is to develop a best friend journal. Every day you write down something positive, like I'm going to have a great short game today. I'm going to hit it down the middle, a lot. I'm going to have a great swing. Whatever it is, you make it a habit, because that's ultimately how we become more successful. It's not because we believe it. It's because we've created habits that allow us to succeed in the future. And so it's really us developing effective, productive habits that make us more successful later on.
2 things that I picked up there as you were describing that, which really sort of struck home. The first off, in this era of data that we all live in, is, the PGA Tour, they've got statistics for statistics, where with this sort of ethereal concept, if you will, the journaling, it's like I try as far as possible. My wife has this gratitude jar. And if something's good happen, you just scribble it on a piece of paper, you drop it in the jar. And when you look back at the end of the year, you go, oh goodness, day to day, it seems like a grind, but at the end of the year, all of these good things happen. So it helps to galvanize what one's doing, because I would almost argue and contend that working on your mental and emotional game is harder than going to the golf course and working on the physical skills. Yes?
Well, they're both difficult.
Yeah.
I think with the physical skills, you might see some more instantaneous results.
Yeah.
The mental game might take longer, but the cliche is the journey starts with one step. And the idea is you got to keep on stepping forward to see the progress. And I think the bottom line to what we're talking about is, if you believe it's all about outcome, that you have to see outcome and you have to see getting better, you're going to produce anxiety, high expectations, and you might quit. But if you enjoy the journey, if you believe, if I work on the mental game and I'm enjoying working on the mental game, and it's a journey to get better, to be more confident, to be more relaxed during pressure. If you see it as a journey of progress and mastery, then outcome will happen down the road. But you can't focus on outcome. You must focus on the steps of the journey.
And along those lines, a word sort of coming to me a little bit, and I was working with a mentor for a few seasons on vocal awareness. Just when you speak as an announcer, to respect punctuation, to stop at a period, to take a breath, and not just to run on in sentences, kind of thing, which all of us do because we've got to get stuff out. So the more I practiced this awareness, the more I became aware of it. So as a result, I was able to improve to a certain extent, even if it's incrementally and just little bits at a time. But little bits at a time, they add up to a whole lot. That journey of 1,000 steps that you reference. How about the self-awareness of where one is when you're practicing this imagery, this mental work during the off season? Sort of being present with oneself. What about the thoughts that travel in and out when you're trying to sit there and you're trying to visualize your swing, and then, oh goodness, the grocery list comes into your mind, or the deadline? To help us over there, please.
Well, of course, self-awareness is the key to change. You have to be self-aware. You have to know your strengths, your weaknesses, what's distracting you, what's not. for you to
Silly.
change.
Oh, yeah.
I think you're getting at a really cool concept too, and that's meditation.
Okay.
With meditation is focusing on that one moment, right? Being present. And it takes a lot of practice. When you first start, things distract you all the time. But eventually you start developing the skill of being in the moment. And, I think that's kind of a good analogy of all the imagery and the meditation is that at first it's going to be difficult. You're going to be distracted. But if you believe in it, you create it, you make it a habit, you make it a discipline, then eventually your focus is going to go from here, everything distracting you, to here, and you will be more in the moment. And the more in the moment you are, the greater the learning.
Could it be as simple as, because here in a recent podcast, we had a guest named Corey Muscara, who spent 6 months in a monastery abroad, honestly, just meditating the entire day, 16 hours a day, no reading, no writing, no speaking, nothing, just alone with your thoughts kind of thing. And he spoke about it, spoke about the lessons learned, how he was a golfer in the past. Um, how about the time of this? Everyone's like, all right, I want to get present. I want to be self-aware. I want to meditate. Well, I want to sit on my chair and get mindful was the word Corey kept using. Improve the imagery, whatever the case might be. As a starter, let's start folks off to say, all right, it's winter time, go work on this. How long? I mean, how long do you go and sit there and try and, wrestle with your thoughts a little bit and start to build up your skills in this area?
Well, before I tell you the skill set of doing it, let me give you a great example.
Right.
So I teach sports psych, and I've been teaching it for years and years at Austin Peay.
Mm-hmm.
And the first 10 minutes, we always meditate.
Okay.
And I had this student who was about 40. He was in the military. He saw combat. He had post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after maybe the fourth or fifth week, he emailed me. He said, when I first started meditating, my mind was foggy, and now the fog has cleared because of meditation. Meditation is not only great for performance, it's great for your health. And so let me tell you what we do in the sports psych class. I put on I think it's real important, put on music that's real relaxing. It's kind of like the music I use is like this flute music. And then what I do is I just say, relax. Right? What's that?
So say if I'm going to the spa and I'm getting a massage.
Yeah, it's like spa music. Right? Okay. And I'll tell you why I think that's good, because it's called classical conditioning. And the idea is that when you play the music while you're relaxing, as soon as over time, you can just start the music and you start relaxing. It kind of sets your body up for that. And that's called classical conditioning. And then I tell my students, relax your toes, focus on your breathing. And as you're focus on your breathing, you're kind of moving the relaxation up the ladder. So you focus on your toes and then your calves, and you relax your thighs, and then you relax your abdominal muscles and your chest and your shoulders and your jaw and your head. And you're doing this while you're breathing. And I usually have your eyes closed. And I tell people to kind of get in a comfortable position, do something so your neck is not tense, because I think that's a big factor, because you're going to have tension here if you do that. Mm-hmm. And then after 5 minutes, I say, okay, now focus on your breathing, and just keep on focus on your breathing. You start getting really good quickly. And the other thing that's really good for golfers is to do this. I say, have a key word like cool or smooth. And after those 5 minutes, when you focused all the way to the top of your head, every time you breathe out, you say the word, let's say cool. And now that word cool gets associated with that calm state. Remember, that's classical conditioning. And then when you go onto the golf course at the start of your pre-shot routine, you focus on your breathing, you do your relaxation, you say the word cool, and you're going to get in a calmer state, because you've trained your body off the golf course to be much more relaxed on the golf course.
It's incredible. It sort of reminds me when I started broadcast, I began in radio. And I was brand new at the stuff, and we were down in Durrell. That's when it was still a World Golf Championships event. And I had Patrick Reed, because he was just coming out, and the older statesman in radio had the bigger names. And Patrick's plays his way to the lead. And so I get the pre-round interviews, because that's what the rookies do as well. And you've got to lob these softballs at guys that are going to go and play golf now. And so he always came on with the earpieces in his ears. So my first question to him was, what are you playing on your phone? What's the music choice? And he goes, same song all the time. And I'm like, okay, what's that? And he goes, Radioactive. Can't remember the band's name, but I remember the song name. And
Yeah, I like that song. I like that song
all
too.
right, okay. I think I can't remember who it is.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
remember.
the and so following day came out again. We're still in the lead final day. I'm like, you playing Radioactive? He goes, yeah. And it's occurring to me now that this might have been what you say there. There's this, the music moves you to this place where you, for Reed, feels radioactive or unbeatable or whatever the case might be. I mean, is this what you're talking about?
Well, there's two principles here going on. One is that song puts him in the right emotional state because that's the key. The other thing that's real important is when we do things that are consistent, we do the same routine, we listen to the same music, consistency gives us a sense of relaxation. So that in itself is also a key ingredient to his success.
Fantastic. The whole addition of music to the thing is fascinating because when I'm out in my pool now and it's chilly, when I'm getting into the state and I submerge myself into water up to about neck high. Let's call this it's imagery. I'm not thinking about my golf swing. I'm just thinking about being present, overall wellness. I guess things that are applicable to good golf too. And so I submerge myself up to about my neck here and shoulders under the water. I sort of open my arms a little bit, my hands, and I just focus on the breathing. And then you could hear the wind in the trees and stuff. And it is the time seems to go quickly because what feels like I was only in there for 3 or 4 minutes is about 10 minutes without one knowing it. I mean, is that me getting to a place where you saying, all right, this is the perfect place to develop yourself emotionally and mentally?
I think you're talking more about flow.
All right.
When we're in flow, a lot of times it seems like 5 minutes, but it was really an hour. I
Mm-hmm.
think what you're really experienced there is a heightened state of flow, and flow is being in the moment as well as the other things of supreme confidence and being really calm. But the idea I think is you've discovered, and this is great for the listeners, is really a good way to get into flow. Like you not only are submerged, but you're allowing nature to kind of put you into a relaxed state. And I do that too. When
Yeah.
I'm about to play a competitive round of golf, I kind of get into the mood of nature, listen to the birds, and it gets me into that calmer state. And I think that's what you're experiencing.
Awesome. So let's give some folks some marching orders before we get to some PGA Tour examples, because you wanted to talk about, when we watch some golf now over the off season, what people can look for. Um, let's give the guys and girls listening. All right, go and get this. Let's work on mental imagery and meditation flow, that sort of stuff. Where do we start? You find your chair, you find your music, proper music, and then you spend how long doing this? And it's not a time watching thing, because if it goes longer, it goes longer. But what would be the starting off point? Would you recommend?
I think a great way to start is in the evening after a shower, because you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. You have your chair, you get comfortable like we did. You start focusing on your breathing, and then you move up from your toes to your head. You have a word like cool or smooth, and you start breathing out after, 3 or 4 minutes. And really, you only need 5 or 6 minutes. Besides doing the relaxation, you could incorporate some imagery. Let's say you're working on something, you're swaying, you could then do some imagery because we know relaxation helps with imagery.
Yeah.
You can see yourself playing around. There's just a variety of things, but I think a fundamental skill that the listeners would really need to start with is to learn to meditate, relax, just do it for 5 minutes, and then incorporate other aspects into their mental game package.
And I'm pretty confident that this will turn into a daily endeavor and not just an off-season thing, huh?
Well, I've been meditating for 40 years.
You look so
It's a
young and
fantastic.
that's why you look
What's
so
that?
young and sprightly, huh?
Well, I'll tell you, interesting, just as to the listeners, this is a cool thing that happened to me. My face was breaking out in college, and I went to the, dermatologist. Nothing was working, and I started meditating, and my face stopped breaking out. there's so many benefits to meditation besides the performance aspect.
Yeah.
But now we're seeing, yesterday there was this quarterback in the NFL that were showing how he was meditating. It's kind of a key ingredient to the mental training package. And I think I probably do it 3 times a week. I don't think you have to do it every day, but if you like doing it, I think it'll help with your sleeping. I think if you do it at night, right before you sleep, it's going to help you get in the right emotional set to avoid all those things that make you not sleep. And so it's not only great for your performance, but it's also great for your health.
Fantastic. Right, folks, let's go do it. Now when we watch golf, you've done this before with us, and you talked about some wonderful concepts like pre-shot routines and stuff that the pros do. Now, following along in this vein, I want to tee you off with, I'm picturing the 100-meter sprinter or the gymnast before the routine. Are they kind of in the starting blocks, or they're ready, and you can see them almost running through the race or the routine in their mind before they go. Jason Day, behind the ball, you can see the inhale and the exhale, and you can see the eyes closed, not like pinch shut, but just gently. And you could almost see that he's becoming what's about to happen in front of him. Now, that's not a guarantee for a good shot, but he's stacking the odds in his favor. So why don't you start there, please?
I think you just made a really good comment, and that is, doing this mental toughness stuff doesn't guarantee a great shot, but it increases the probability of having a good shot. And if you talk about Jason Day, he closes his eyes. He's using imagery that has worked for him. That doesn't mean you have to close your eyes, but you should try it. And the idea is that it works for him, and so he uses it. If you look at people's routines, I think, just like everyone's golf swing, routines are different.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at on the PGA Tour, look at a routine that you like, that you think is going to work for you, because you're unique. And Jason Day's routine might not work for you, and Jordan Spieth's routine might not work for you. But what you want to do is you got to believe success leaves clues. And so they're doing it for a reason, and you should try it. And if it feels comfortable, then incorporate that into your routine.
Mm. And the routine, now you referenced Spieth, and the golf teacher in me is going off in this direction. For the longest while, that practice swing he was making was looking all funky and awkward. But essentially, he was sort of rehearsing the change that he and his instructor had been working on in the golf swing. So the routine doesn't have to be canned. It's almost personalized to what you are looking to try and achieve on the next golf swing.
And it can change over time. I remember Corey Pavin, he did the same thing in his routine.
Yeah.
That over the top move, because I guess they were, coming too far and they were getting stuck. And so it was helping them. And again, you could do that in your routine. And if you need to get that feel, that's key. And then you can change it over time. I'll tell you a really cool study. The Golf Channel actually did a study on Brandt Snedeker.
Mm-hmm.
And they discovered by the time he pulled his club out of his bag till the time he hit it was always 13 seconds. So a routine should be consistent in its time as well, because if it's longer, it's telling your body something's wrong. If it's shorter, it's telling your body something's wrong. So when you do a routine, make sure it's the same amount of time. And, it's not just about the physical part, it's also the mental part. It's imagery, it's breathing, it's getting yourself in the right emotional set, almost like putting a bubble around yourself so that the pressure bounces off.
So glad you say that, because you kind of got me thinking. I had a very fascinating session here recently, and the podcast was the one just prior to this, or maybe I can't recall now, it's all timing, with a guy who teaches basically a concept of audio golf, where he develops audio cues, for your golf swing, which is fascinating because he believes that audio works quicker than sight, because it's just sound waves, really. And so he traveled from Austria to spend time with me, and he watched my putting stroke a few times. So he gave me this putting stroke cue. I think the sound was Nika. And then all I had to do was match those sounds when I swung my putter back and forth. But the first time I was saying this stuff to myself, but not matching it physically. But when I truly released myself to this, and I'm getting to the routine observation, I started to notice there was real progression forwards. Now, a lot of folks, when they're in their routine, to me, are sort of in the routine, but they're not really in the routine. They're kind of autopiloting their way through the thing. And when you truly get into it, as you highlight, it does set the odds in one's favor once again, and it almost gets you into this place where it's not like you're living with your foot on first base trying to go ahead and steal second, if you know where I'm going.
Right. And you're right. Some of these people just dial it in, and then that's not the part of the routine. You almost want to feel like the routine's part of your shot, and you can't even hit your shot unless you do your
Yeah,
routine.
right. Mm-hmm.
And, I know a couple of people have talked about this before, but you have the think box and then you have the play box, and you have the think box where you're maybe thinking about your swing and maybe trying to get a feel. But once you kind of move to the play box, which is over the ball, you want to get more reactive. And I do something very similar with players that you're talking about. I count. When they're over the ball, I go 1 and 2 and go. And they have to find their own internal rhythm, because if your rhythm is or your routine is rhythmical, your swing's going to be rhythmical. If your routine is quick, then your swing's going to get quick. So it's almost like you have to find that, what you call an auditory cue, to create that beautiful rhythm, because we all know when we're playing our best, we feel that rhythm.
It's amazing to me. This is diving deep now, but what you say there is so real, because I've experienced, like, in my mind, I'm wanting to do one thing, but the body systems that are going on within that no people aren't even really aware of, you still this human being within. And all these systems are moving, and you're trying to direct everything to the intent of hitting this golf shot properly. So having this complete engagement almost like gets you human being into a situation where for just a split second you're a golfer, and then you step out there and you're back to being a human being again. Yes.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think that the idea is that, I know Tiger Woods, sports psychologist, would call it the 10-second window.
All
And
right.
then, right, you have 10 seconds. We talked about with Brand 13 seconds, but whatever feels comfortable, that window is that, that opportunity to hit the greatest shot. And then once that window's over, you're enjoying the day, and you're enjoying that you're, like you said, going back to being a human being. But the idea is you're not focusing. So focus is a mental energy. And if you're focusing the entire round, you're going to burn out. So you got to take that 10 seconds and be intense, and then kind of really enjoy the round. And that allows you to stay fresh throughout the entire round.
All right. Learning from PGA Tour players, we've talked about Spieth and Tiger and Jason Day. I want to speak about emotional control a little bit. Probably the best case study right now is one John Rahm, who he looks like Mount Vesuvius for about 15 seconds. And when I'm on the golf course close to him, I'm like, whoa, I'm staying out of his way for the next minute or two. And then 4 or 5 minutes later, he walks up to you and, like, what happened just a little while ago when I nearly broke my club? That didn't even happen. Let's help folks a little bit with that, please.
Well, John Rahm's a great example. Is you got to figure out what works for you. So he needs to release all that pressure. He needs to release that emotion. And, you might say, well, it's not the best way, but it works for him. And once he's released that emotion, he goes back to being totally calm and collected. I know Tiger Woods has said the same thing. The goal is, when we hit a bad shot, we get really upset. We need a positive way to release. Maybe it's talk to yourself and say, you can hit a great shot next time. Maybe going like this and brushing it off.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just getting upset and then letting it go, and knowing you can't take that to the next shot. The secret, again, is everybody's unique. You got to figure out what works for you. But I think everybody needs some type of release mechanism to let that pent up emotion out.
Well, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, because now I'm sort of going where angels fear to tread, I think, where, again, just, we're human beings, correct? And we have a central nervous system, and there's sympathetic and there's parasympathetic. And we're in between these two systems, fight or flight, all of the time. And I guess what you're saying is that release helps us to go from ramped up and elevated and adrenalized back to my meditative, more relaxed, more equal, more a state of equilibrium. Am I right?
Yeah, some people have called it a post-shot routine. The idea is you have this mechanism to let the bad shot go. I think what I recommend in a post-shot routine is figure out what you did wrong, because I think a lot of times if we figure out what we did wrong and just give yourself a second or two to do that, it allows it to let it go. And then I basically say the next step is to take a practice swing with the way you want the correction, and then see the ball go where you want and just say next shot, and then you move on. You need some type of mechanism to let it go. I know Jim Furyk he's like the perfect example of a post-shot routine.
Yeah.
If he made a bad chip, he would be there, and he would do a couple shots, and you could see him visualizing the way he wanted, and then he moved on. And I think that's a big part of the mental training package, is allowing yourself to let go of the bad shot.
One more question there, because you're right, Furyk does. And a lot of folks, the PGA Tour guys, they'll miss a putt and they'll drop back and sort of point their hands at the line and wave their hands as if to say, how offending green and ball. I mean, you didn't do what I was expecting. Where Furyk would make the practice stroke again. And he would sort of not replicate, but do what was necessary. So he looked at the situation and reacted. That's for the miss. Would you then advocate to golfers, again, being cognizant of pace of play, that after you've hit a good shot, you perhaps try and galvanize that feeling a little bit? Is that a thing?
Well, I think if you hit the good shot, then you have a good visualization. You don't really need to.
Right.
But what you could do is after the round, when you hit those, those great shots, you write down in the best plays book, on hole 13, I netted a 5-iron and I hit it perfect. And you create the feeling and what it felt like, and then you put that in your bag, and you can look at that the next time you play. Oh yeah, I hit that great 5-iron. That's how you replicate it, I think, and that's probably the best way.
You started this conversation referencing journaling, and you're finishing with journaling as well. That speaks to the expert that you are. I'd just like to add to that and then get your closing thoughts. Those journals, I can't tell you how many golfers I've seen that they start, they've got the little hardcover book in the bag, and they write, and they're all disciplined. 3, 4, 5 days later, week, month, maybe, that thing's gathering dust in the bottom of their golf bag, and they've forgotten it's in there. Huh? Do you see that pretty often?
Well, you might have to prompt some people, but I think the ones that are real successful do it. Maybe they're doing it at home. Again, it's about building effective habits, but also it's about building effective habits that work for you. If you tell an athlete, golfer to journal and they don't like doing it, you can't harp on them. That's not a good tool for them. You got to figure out a tool that works better for them.
All right. It's been fascinating as always. It's been really helpful. In fact, I've got copious notes written down here. If you were watching on YouTube, you'd see me scribbling. Anything that you want that you want to leave the golfer with, all the folks in the wintertime now, and even the sunshiny folks, to go and improve their mental mastery, their emotional control, anything in the off season folks can go and focus on? It's kind of your closing soundbite, please.
Well, I think a great tool that we have now is the iPhone, or you have pictures of great swings, and I think over the winter, if you looked at your a couple great swings, you're going to keep that great image and that great feeling over the winter. And we used to call that Cybervision, but I think that's just a great tool to to keep confident and to have great imagery throughout the winter when you're not playing. And then when you get to the spring and you can start playing again, you'll have these really positive image and really positive feelings that you can take back to the golf course.
So not necessarily just looking at your own bad swing all the time, but finding a nice model and really diving into that, putting it on a loop almost. You can do that nowadays with iPhone record and stuff. And
technology is just perfect. I mean, that is a key ingredient, is to watch good swings that you've created on the range or the golf course, and could, like you said, put in a loop and just watch it over and over again.
Awesome. While you're in your comfy couch after your warm shower.
Exactly.
Gregg, man, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for joining us. Where can the folks find you? Social media, website, and the like?
Well, we talked about, what you could do in the winter. Actually, I have an online golf psychology course called masteringgolfpsychology.com. And there's a free ebook. There's a lot of free videos on there, free articles. One specifically for confidence. I left the confidence section up. So there's a lot of free videos on there as well. And if they go to drgreggsteinberg.com, they can see some other videos that I've created. Or if you go to YouTube, you can see some other videos just by Googling my name.
Share the address where they can go. The first one you shared, where they can
masteringgolfpsychology.com.
masteringgolfpsychology.com. That's your Christmas gift to everybody listening. Appreciate you, Dr. Steinberg. Have a happy and blessed festive season.
Mark, again, it's definitely been a privilege to be on your show. Thanks again.